Hi, my name is Cristina. Today I'm going to talk about how to get paid to write free software. I became interested in this topic last year after I quit my job at a big Silicon Valley tech company, driven by a crisis of conscience around the ethical implications of my job and a desire to have more ownership over my knowledge work. I decided to spend a year writing free software. So who pays money for something that's free? And is it enough money to cover my rent? Well, the bad news is that I started this experiment in December 2019, which turned out to not be such a great time to take risks and try new things. The good news is that I actually have succeeded in paying my rent. There are a number of organizations out there that provide financial support to developers and maintainers of free software, like private companies, nonprofits, academic and research institutions, and even individual people like you or me. In this talk, we'll do a deep dive into one important way free open source software projects in the Python community get funding, who these funders are, and what results from this funding. I'll also introduce the newly formed project funding work group and explain how we can help you in your quest for funding. First, though, let's talk about some caveats. I'm giving this talk in September 2020. Coronavirus has ravaged the United States and continues to wreak havoc on our communities and the economy. Additionally, the entire west coast of the U.S. is battling several historic wildfires. These fires have caused tens of thousands of people to evacuate while simultaneously confining tens of millions of people to their homes because of noxious air quality, me included. This is all to say that it's a challenging time for a large number of people and organizations in this country. As such, the funding situation on the ground has shifted significantly in the past few months and will very likely continue to evolve rapidly. By the time that this talk is made public, some of the information in it could be incorrect or obsolete. For the most up-to-date information about a funder or grant opportunity, reach out to the responsible organization directly. And above all, please be kind and patient. We're all in this together. All right, with that said, let's shift gears and review a couple of case studies where funding helped open source projects deliver key outcomes. Here's a fun fact. The Python Software Foundation gave out about $330,000 last year in grants to individuals and projects in the Python community. One of these projects was the Beware project, which was started in 2014 by Russell Keith McGee. The Beware project aims to allow Python developers to write native apps for desktop and mobile platforms. At the time, they supported mostly desktop operating systems and iOS, with Android support lagging behind. They applied for and were awarded $50,000 to bring Python native tools to Android development. With the money in hand, the maintainers then hired a contractor to deliver the project work. In July 2020, 6 months after receiving funding, the Beware project shipped Android support and uploaded an Android app written in Python to the Google Play Store. Go check it out. What other kinds of initiatives does the Python Software Foundation fund? Python projects that either create new libraries, improve current ones, or port libraries to Python 3. They also fund development sprints, user groups and meetups, conferences, and workshops. There is no min or max amount, though the awards are generally sized from a few hundred to a few $1,000s, and there's no deadline. You can apply anytime. Our next case study is actually a critical piece of Python infrastructure, the Python Package Index, also known as PyPI. What is the Python Package Index? It is the canonical repository of third-party software in the Python ecosystem. As of September 2020, the Python Package Index hosts over 260,000 projects, which in aggregate contain over 3 million files. A few years ago, PyPI consisted of an untested codebase built upon an esoteric, deprecated web framework running on a single virtual machine. The now director of infrastructure for the Python Software Foundation, Ernest Durbin, actually gave a very entertaining talk at PyGotham 2017 that went into detail about how bad it actually was, titled Running Vintage Software. And I recommend that you check it out if you're interested in more context. Today, the PyPI codebase is a robust open source platform with high uptime and low latency. The codebase, called Warehouse, is available on GitHub. It has 100% test coverage and a diverse community of over 300 contributors. If you want to bring up your own PyPI mirror or set up a private package index or just run it locally, you can easily download the Warehouse codebase and bring up a fully containerized environment using nothing more than git clone and a couple of make commands. So, to what do we owe the security, reliability, and extensibility of PyPI? In my view, it's a combination of factors. First, it's the community. There is a hardworking army of volunteers that are continually pushing forward crucial incremental improvements in their free time. These contributions were invaluable to the initial development of Warehouse and the current functioning of PyPI. Second, it's large concerted initiatives from paid contributors over a substantial period of time. Sometimes these paid contributors work at big tech companies and develop PyPI as a condition of their full-time employment. Other times, these paid contributors are hired subject matter experts who are contracted to solve a particular problem or implement an agreed-upon feature. So let's talk about this extreme software makeover, PyPI edition. In 2017, the Python Software Foundation applied for and received funding from MOS, the Mozilla Open Source Support Awards, to roll out V1 of Warehouse as the new PyPI backend. This award was a force multiplier for PyPI and its developer community. It funded the final development and deployment of a codebase built on a modern, widely adopted web framework with an easy-to-use local development environment, comprehensive test coverage, and improved UI and search capability. Unfortunately, Mozilla has paused this program as of last month and isn't making any new awards this year. Check out mozilla.org/moz for the latest information about this program. What other work in PyPI has been grant funded? Well, in 2018, the packaging work group applied for and received funding from the Open Technology Fund's Core Infrastructure Fund to improve the security and accessibility of PyPI. With this money, the Python Software Foundation solicited proposals and hired a couple of contractors to perform the work. These contractors added multi-factor authentication, audit logging, API token uploads, internationalization, and localization to PyPI. OTF, a nonprofit, is a large, well-established source of funds for open source software globally. These funds largely originate from USAGM, which is a federal agency. Because of what can only be described as federal chicanery, OTF was forced to pause the current and all future funding rounds. And on a completely related note, don't forget to vote in November. Check out OTF's website for the latest updates. Last year, the packaging work group also applied for and received a grant from Facebook Research to implement advanced security features in PyPI. The Python Software Foundation issued a request for proposals and eventually hired me to implement the malware detection system in PyPI. This gift is also currently funding the implementation of PEP 458, which describes the integration of the update framework into PyPI to sign package uploads and downloads. Right now, Facebook Research only has one award program open, and it's limited to academic researchers working in the digital privacy space. The award sum is $100,000, and new programs open up every couple of months, so keep an eye out on their website. Whether it's shipping new features like the Beware project or cleaning up technical debt, doing community management, and improving security like for PyPI, there is money for open source out there. Here are a couple more examples of some other funders and what they fund. If scientific computing is your jam, you could consider becoming a NumFocus affiliated project. NumFocus is a nonprofit organization that supports the open source scientific computing community with small development grants of $5,000 or less. Anyone is eligible to apply, and applications are reviewed on a quarterly basis. The next application round closes on October 15th. The Comcast Innovation Fund also provides funding to support open source software development. Applications are reviewed on a rolling basis, and projects can apply for up to $150,000. Are you located in the US, or are you located outside of the US but within a UNICEF program country? In 2016, UNICEF launched an innovation fund to invest in early-stage open-source startups focused on positively impacting children's lives. The fund this year seeks to specifically support startups working in the following category areas: machine learning, artificial intelligence, blockchain, or virtual reality. The award amount is $100,000, and the application deadline is January 2nd, 2021. A lot of grant deadlines have already passed for 2020, but keep an eye out on the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, Grant for the Web, NLNet, the Core Infrastructure Initiative, and the Open Source Security Foundation. They might open up new rounds of funding later this year or next year. As a course rule, the larger the funder, the more onerous the application requirements. With organizations that make smaller grants, like the Python Software Foundation or NumFocus, you don't really need anything more than proof of a well-run or well-liked open source project that fits with the mission of the organization. Funders want to fund important and sustainable projects. These types of projects have a couple of things in common. First, they have more than one maintainer. Maintainers play a key role in the long-term maintenance and continuity of a project. If you are a single-person maintainer, recruiting other maintainers should be your top priority. While I was researching this talk, I actually came across a new project called Adoptapass. To be honest, I kind of wish I had thought of this. It's a great idea, but I'm glad someone did. It provides a place where projects can advertise that they're looking for maintainers, basically personal ads for open source projects. Check it out. 2, a community, and a sustainable way to grow it. This means having guidelines for how new contributors can get involved with the project. It might include things like onboarding documentation, instructions for bringing up a local development environment and running tests, and a code of conduct like the contributor covenant. As an open source project grows, your job as a maintainer might shift from software development to growing and managing a community of contributors. 3, predictable code execution. Continuous integration, reproducible builds, deterministic runtime behavior, comprehensive test coverage, style guide, etc. These are all things that improve the user and contributor experience. So, you're running an open source project, and this project has a community, a free software license, some basic functionality, documentation, and tests. Let's start your search for funding. What are some basic elements of a good application? A well-scoped idea that is clearly wanted by the community. Disrupt VPNs is not well-scoped, whereas implement a transparent proxy over SSH is. A plan of action for how to achieve the desired outcomes. This is literally a work plan, i.e., who will be doing the work, what work they'll be doing, how long it's expected to take, and how much it's going to cost. And 3, a cogent explanation of what these outcomes will be. Better privacy isn't an explicit enough explanation, whereas the new MAC address spoofing feature would better protect user privacy when they connect their device to new networks, is a better explanation. Funders may not be well versed in the virtues of your MAC address spoofing project, so you need to craft an explicit narrative that they can understand. This formula isn't limited to projects that need software development. Grants are available for UI UX improvements, translation, education efforts, documentation, project management, security audits, or anything else that an open source project might need to meet the needs of its community. How long does it take to get funding? That depends on the funder, so you'll need to follow up with the organizations directly to find out. From the time an application is submitted, it can take anywhere from 1 to 6 months and sometimes longer for your application to get approved and for funds to be dispersed. What is the project funding work group? The transformative impact that funding has had on the development of Python core infrastructure and community growth inspired the creation of the project funding work group. Founded in June 2020, this work group exists to advise the Python community volunteers on applying for external grants and similar funding. We are a group of volunteers who provide resources and support to projects within the Python community to help them succeed in their search for funding. We can help connect you to a funder, refine and review your grant application, or help you draft a budget. We also provide some free resources on our GitHub repository, or you can feel free to email us directly at projectfundingwg@python.org. All right, that is almost a wrap. Before I call it quits, though, I'd like to acknowledge a few people. Thank you goes out to the crew behind PyGotham TV for bringing this conference online this year. Thank you to Sumana Harihareshwara for providing the needed impetus to help start the project funding work group and lending her hard-won expertise and thought leadership on grant funding. Thank you to Dustin Ingram for some key statistics on how much funding packaging has received, from who and when. And the rest of the project funding work group has also helped me develop the initial outline and abstract for this talk. And thanks to you for sitting through this whole episode. Hopefully I made it worth your time. Bye now.